Aaron asked me to share my thoughts on the power of prayer in my life. I would have to start by saying that prior to March 25th of this year, the power of prayer was something that I'd never really personally experienced. Prior to that date, for me, prayer was something I'd never really had to rely on. Obviously, growing up as a preacher's kid and literally growing up in the church, I was constantly exposed to prayer. I guess I believed in prayer and I believed it could be powerful, I just never personally experienced it. To me, it was just kind of something that you're supposed to do. All of that changed for me on Sunday morning, March 25th. Janine and Jonah had gone on a cruise the week before, and that Saturday night, Jonah got sick with what we thought was just the flu. But by Sunday morning, he was really sick, and it seemed like he was getting worse. So we saw a small dot on his foot that just didn't look right, and we made the immediate decision to go to the hospital. When we got to Baptist South, they took our information and they got him into a room pretty quick. But what was strange was about 10 minutes into the room, a nurse came in and they started an IV, and Jonah hadn't seen a doctor yet. And soon the doctor came in to talk to us, and I noticed that everyone on the floor had put on face masks, and I was thinking for the first time, okay, God, what's going on here? Because it just wasn't right. The doctor came in and explained that he thought Jonah had a bacterial infection called Neisseria, and that his best guess was that it had a mortality rate of about 10%, and that the antibiotic that he was getting was exactly what was needed to kill it, which didn't make me feel any better at this point. The next thing I knew, they were doing a spinal tap and sending him to ICU downtown in an ambulance. By the time I got to Wolfson's, he had gone from bad to worse. The doctor there sat us down and explained that the next 24 to 48 hours would be critical and an emotional roller coaster. He said that soon, Jonah would be in total respiratory failure. He would need to be placed on life support. Next, he said that Jonah would go into complete kidney failure. All I can tell you is that sometime around that point, I started praying like I've never prayed before. I started and basically didn't stop for about 5 days. To say that it was an emotional roller coaster doesn't even do it justice. We would get 1 or 2 pieces of good news, then the doctor would drop a bombshell that could basically change everything in a moment. So I would walk outside and I would pray. I ranged from begging God to save Jonah to almost screaming at God for letting him go through this, and then I'd go back to begging again. About 2 or 3 days into this, the cards and the phone calls just started pouring in. It got so intense at the hospital that they locked the floor down and they took his name off the register. It became obvious that there were people all over the world praying for Jonah. We heard from people all over the United States, from India, Brazil, Singapore, all praying. Then some remarkable things started to happen. About that time, one night Janine stepped out to get a Coke or something, and I was in the room with the head nurse, and she said, "Your wife told me that there are thousands of people all over the world praying for Jonah." And I said, "Well, yeah." And she said, "I can tell." Then the night before they took him off life support, the kidney specialist came in to check on Jonah. He's this cool Middle Eastern guy named Assad, and I asked him, I said, "What do you think about Jonah?" And he said, quote, "He's a miracle. Sometimes there's things in science we can't explain, and he's one of them." So I just kind of stood there with my jaw on the floor. That night, I had to leave to go to one of my other sons, Jess's baseball games. And at this point, we were 5, 6 nights into this, and I was tired and exhausted. On my way back to the hospital, I was basically just prayed out, and I told God, I said, "Look, you're going to do what you're going to do, so do it." And for the first time, for some reason, I just felt like it was going to be okay. The next morning, while they were praying for Jonah at Manor Christian School, they were taking the breathing tube out of the hospital. At the point when I couldn't pray anymore, people all over the world were. Jonah woke up, and he's gotten better every day. His kidneys came back quicker than anyone could have predicted. He's going to make a full recovery, and it's just going to take some time. Once we were out of the woods, I did some research, and I found out that what the first doctor had told me was either bad information or he was basically lying to me to keep me from flipping out. But what Jonah had is 100% fatal if not treated within 24 hours of onset. If treatment is given early, less than 50% of those people survive. Of the people who survive, 20% of those people lose appendages or limbs due to an infection, and we dodged all those bullets. The statistics don't lie. Statistically, he shouldn't be here, let alone be healthy and making a full recovery. I can tell you that since all this has happened, the power of prayer has a whole new meaning for me. I don't claim to have any answers as to why God chooses to do what he does, but I can tell you without a doubt, the prayers of thousands are what saved Jonah's life.